Hello everyone, this is Melanie with Vintage Hill Studio. Thank you for dropping by. I'm going to show you how to make this butterfly chain that pulls out of the top of this ball mason jar. And to start with, we will use these Hero Arts stamp and cut set, and I'm only going to use the smaller butterfly die. And then some scrap paper that I have on hand. I thought this marbled looking paper would be beautiful for a full chain of butterflies. So you can see I'm going to cut out many butterflies here. In fact, 26 in all, because I am going to stamp happy birthday on these butterflies. And I'm going to do that twice for the front and the back. I'm using this little set of alphabet stamps here from Gemini for Crafter's Companion. And you can see that's going to stamp perfectly on there. I thought about using black ink, but I resorted to using the Versafine Clair. And this is a gray ink. Let me see what this is called. Morning Mist. And I thought, the thought behind using the gray, that it wouldn't be so stark behind the ball mason jar glass that I'm going to be working on. So here you can see I've stamped Happy Birthday twice. Once for the front side of the butterflies and one for the back side. And the idea is that this would be legible from any which way, because this is going to twist and turn as I put together my chain. So I'm just going to take a little bit of tape runner and get these put together very quickly using some monofilament thread, which is also known as invisible thread. I'm going to string that right down the center of these butterflies, and I can use my grid mat to help me align these and also space them apart. So I will leave a little bit of length there at the top, which needs to go under the lid of the mason jar. And then I'm not going to cut the bottom because I need to add the word birthday below this. Now the plus to just laying this right onto these butterflies, with the exception of them sticking to my hands, is that I can move them up and down and adjust the space between them as needed. So I'm just going to get these roughly put together very quickly here. You can see how this goes together. And the tape runner allows me again to move these up and down on that invisible thread. So I can play with the spacing however I need to. Then I'll move on and leave a little extra space between the word happy and where I start birthday, and do the same for all the letters in birthday. And there is our butterfly chain. Isn't it beautiful? I love all the colors in here. So for the very last butterfly, I'm wrapping the thread around several times before I attach the other side of the butterfly here on the letter Y. And that's just going to keep it from slipping at the bottom. And then finally, I will cut that length off at the very tail end. So again, there is our full chain. You can see why I stamped on both sides, because you never know how this is going to be pulling out of the jar. Okay, next comes a little piece of acetate. Now, I did not have anything to go by for a jar except for a real one, and I chose this one that has kind of the, it's not fully rounded, it has some flat sides. So I'm just going to take a Sharpie and go around it. And you can see this is going to be pretty rough because the jar rocks back and forth, but it gives me the visual of a jar. And I can always fix this with my pen my scissors as I continue to cut this out. So I will cut out my mason jar. I'm not really worried that it looks a little wonky. I just needed a template, and the real jar served me very well. Then all I need to do is bring over a baby wipe and wipe away those Sharpie marks. And that cleans up very easily. Then I'm ready to move on. So now I'm just going to do a quick little sketch here to draw in what would appear to be the bottom of the jar, and also the threads where the lid screws onto. And this looks okay as it is. And then I decided to come in with a paint pen, and this is a silver paint pen, and I'm going to go around my jar and add some highlights and a little bit of detail around the edges to just give it more of a 3D look. Now, in between, I will let this paint pen dry, and it is actually fairly permanent. You'll see here as I move along that if you will just have the patience to let this dry, it's going to serve you very well. Then I'm going to bring over a little bit of tape and place that acetate right over the jar because I want to trace the word ball, and I want it to look as authentic as possible, so I'm going to really use that as a template here. Again, using the paint pen to go around the word ball. And then I will remove this acetate, and you're going to see that even that tape does not pull off the paint. If you let that dry very well over the acetate, you can see it's not a problem when I pull off the tape. I'm going to straighten these letters out a little bit because it was hard to trace over that bumpy debossed word on the jar. There we go. There is our mason jar ready for the butterflies. Next thing I need to work on is that little lid as well as the band that goes around it. So again, taking my Sharpie, giving myself a rough sketch here of what the lid and the band would look like, trying to keep it kind of a 3D look. And then I will bring over a marker and give that some highlights and a little bit of shading. You know, I love to add the little details to everything, so that's why I'm using this marker. And again, if you will let it dry, you'll be set. So I'm not real concerned about this being perfect. I just want to have more of a 3D effect here on the jar lid and the band. If you do any canning, and I have a lot of friends who are very talented with canning their own fruits and vegetables and making jellies and all of that wonderful stuff, this is a tipping my hat to all of those canners out there. You really have a talent, and you're appreciated. Trying to make this lid look a little more authentic, doing a little bit of trimming here, and I'll be ready to move on. Okay, I decided to go ahead and make a back side to this as well because I am going to sandwich the top of that butterfly chain. Remember, I left a little thread hanging out at the top, and I wished I'd left it a little bit longer because this needs to tuck in behind the lid and down into the jar. So just a lesson learned: if you're going to repeat this project, leave the top of your string just a bit longer because you can always pull it up or down for your chain, but then your butterflies will be, you know, better hidden behind this lid when you're done. Anyway, I've got that thread sandwiched there between my lids, and I am going to then bring over a little piece of this blue vellum to give it more of a glass effect. And I'm just tracing around my template there of the ball jar. I'll cut that out, and then I will be ready to put the jar onto the vellum, creating a type of pocket for the butterfly chain to fit down between the vellum and the ball glass jar, like this, see? I really needed to maneuver this acetate over the vellum, so I decided to use a hot glue gun just on the edges. It doesn't really show, and it sticks really quickly, and that's what I was going for. So again, I am just gluing around the edges because I am trying to make that jar just a bit rounded but not too bulky, because my butterfly chain needs to fit down between the vellum and this ball mason jar. So again, kind of just finessing this a little bit to create that pocket. And I found that the hot glue actually works the best for me between these two materials. All right, now if you need to open that up and see if you've missed anything, go ahead and do that while your hot glue is still ready to go. Then let that dry and cool thoroughly, and then come back and snip around the edges just to clean that up around the jar. Because you can see the vellum overhangs the jar just a bit, so that just takes some very little trimming to get that cleaned up and ready to go. All right, there's my card base and mats, and I have all of these supplies and dimensions listed in the description part below this YouTube video. So if you're interested in what I used, take a look down there and I'll have it all typed up for you. Okay, now I just used a little bit of my Elmer's Craft spray adhesive on the back of the vellum, and I'm going to press that down to my card front, and there I've got my little pocket for my butterfly chain. Next, I decided to bring over this Creek Bank Creations, and it says lift with a little arrow, because I wasn't sure if the recipient would know what to do with this without a little bit of instructions. So I used that same gray that I used in the mat behind the printed mat there. And I'm going to adhere this to the back side of my jar lid. Now I initially put it right in the center, and that was okay. You're going to see as we move along here that I've changed my mind, because it kind of looked like a birthday candle or something to me. It wasn't the best placement, but that's all right, because it's going to come off and I'll be able to move that around. So let's tuck our butterfly chain down into the mason jar. If you need a little help, again, bring over your ruler. It'll help you stuff them on down in there. And then we will be able to place our lid on top. Get that turned around. And to help me with that, I'm going to use some magnetic strips right here. They're adhesive on one side, magnetic on the other. So I'll just remove the adhesive tape, get that put down behind my lid, and then I'll take the second one and use the magnet over this back side here, and then when I press it down onto the jar itself, it will align perfectly. That way, when you take the lid off and on, it will just adhere right to the jar with the magnets. Okay, here's where I decided I need to move that lift over to one side or the other. I thought it would look good here. No, I don't really like that, so I'm going to move it over to the right and also position it a little at a diagonal. Now I like that a lot better. It's less obtrusive. And that finishes my card for today. I am so glad you popped over to join me for this card. It was a little bit tedious to make and try to figure out how to get the lid and everything together, and so that the butterflies would pull out smoothly. But I really like the way it came out, and I think it's a very interesting interactive card. So I hope you got something out of this, maybe some inspiration to use, other die cuts, anything you want in your jar here. I just like the idea of the butterflies fluttering out of the jar. So thank you so much for dropping by. If you're new to the channel, I would love to have you as a subscriber. If you're returning, welcome back. Feel free to leave me comments, and I hope to see you again next week. Maybe give this a try if you're interested. And happy crafting, everyone.